Last week, as some of you may know, hopefully you read it. Some of you may have read the letter that I sent to the City of Richmond's City Council President and Vice President and to the RPS Board and Vice Chair, outlining the need for us to work together to continue to build schools in a timely fashion that respects our children's right to learn in quality, safe 21st century buildings. Now, there are several, when I say several, I mean several misconceptions floating around about cost, about time, and about the real need for collaboration. Baffles me, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper and sort of combat some of those misconceptions today. We're going to clear up these misconceptions before tonight's meeting amongst the City Council and the school board, which I want you all to know that I was not invited to. But I have an opportunity to speak to you all today, okay? I'm going to ask the Chief Administrative Officer, Lincoln Saunders, to join me up here so we can have a healthy conversation about our school construction plans in conjunction with Richmond Public Schools, if they're willing. As I stated in my letter last week, our offer from last summer, let me stress, last summer to build schools that RPS designs still stands. Still stands. I understand that the school board wants full control over school design. And I absolutely believe that the way schools are designed should be left to the experts in instruction, meaning Richmond Public Schools. They will have to use these schools each day and every day to educate our kids. And the principals and the teachers and the academic leaders should have the complete creative control over the design of these facilities. I wholeheartedly believe in that. But based on what we know today, if RPS continues to maintain its current position against collaboration and sticking with their current construction method, which is design, bid, build, the school would almost certainly not be completed before March of 2027. And we're talking specifically about George Wythe High School. March of 2027. Now, if the city government, and Richmond Public Schools were to work together and collaborate on George Wythe, utilizing the city's approved construction method, the school could be complete as soon as July or August of 2025. As you recall, we had an earlier timeline a year ago, which was 2024. But since we have not seen any progress since last year, that timeline now, the earliest we could make that facility happen for our children is August of 2025, working together. Additionally, if the city and RPS were to collaborate and work together, Fox Elementary School, the school could be completed by July or August of 2024 compared to January 2026 if RPS sticks with their current process of design, bid, build. Okay? See the difference there, difference in timelines. And all this could happen if we were to work together like we've done so in the past. I know many parents have asked the question, why does it matter who builds it? Why does that change the amount of time it takes to build a school? And the reason is very simple. While I believe our staff are more than ready and prepared to manage construction, a construction project of this size, the impact of the time of construction is overwhelmingly a product of the construction method that you choose to use. I've mentioned already today, design, bid, build, which has a longer timeline. There are two primary methods approved by the state for school construction. You got design, bid, build, and construction management at risk, CMS at risk. As you can read in any JLARC study out there from a few years back, each has its benefits, its pros and its cons. But when time is a critical factor, and I would say the families at Fox, the families at With, time is a factor, CM at risk is the best option. Why? Because it gets these kids into high quality facilities as quickly as possible. I think they deserve that. And what I hear from those who support the school board and believe that our kids can't wait, well, we agree on that. Our kids can't wait. Now, the major difference between the two methods is that under design, bid, build, you finalize 100% of the design before you go to bid for construction. 100% before you go to construction. When you do CM at risk, you begin the early phases of construction, such as site prep, while you finalize the design. It lets the two processes move concurrently. Now, the city already has a CM at risk policies in place. We already have these policies in place. We don't have to wait any longer to pass policies, approve policies, do due diligence. We already have it in place. And we could meet the timeline stated, I mentioned earlier, if we simply collaborate and manage construction jointly. What I mean by jointly means working together, what our constituents expect of us. Any person on the street believes that the city and the school board are already working together. And so when we receive pushback on collaboration, it blows the minds of those who live in the communities in Fox or George Wythe. Blows their minds that folks, adults, aren't able to work together. Blows my mind too. But if that is still not palatable, working together is not palatable to the school board, I would implore them to take the additional time to adopt the construction manager at risk model. If they don't want to work with the city to make these schools a reality, then do your part to adopt this model that will get our kids into a school on a faster timeline. Our kids deserve that. Our kids deserve that. You may have heard comments to the contrary now, but I can assure you that CM at risk allows greater control over costs, not less, which is especially important considering current challenges posed by inflation, the workforce challenges that we're having, and also the supply chain delays that everyone is experiencing at this moment. These factors matter in the construction of a facility. You just heard from Mr. Wren talk about the construction of our community centers. These are all factors that we're taking into consideration as we erect these buildings. And those factors will have to be considered by the school board as well. Now, speaking of those comments, I want to take a step back and correct some misinformation about the city's history working with RPS on building schools. If you go to the Virginia Department of Education website to look at the 2020 to 2021 annual cost report, you'll see data for 9 schools completed in that time period of 2020 to 2021. And if you look closely, you'll see that there's a middle school in Campbell County. Ever been to Campbell County before? Rural county in the western part of the state. And that school costs more per square foot than our new River City Middle School did. Okay? You'll see that the elementary school in New Kent County, to our east off of I-64, costs $311.43 per square foot, while our former Green Elementary School, which is Cardinal now, costs $311.11 per square foot. That's a whopping 1 penny more. 1 penny more. You'll see a high school built in Henrico County costs almost $60 per square foot more than our middle school. What you won't see is the comparison, that this comparison is basically worthless. That's what you won't see, because these comparisons are not apples to apples comparisons. High schools on average cost more than middle or elementary schools because they have more expensive spaces like science labs. You see any science labs in middle schools? You see any science labs in elementary schools? You see them in high schools. Or you'll see that the former George Mason, which is Henry Marsh Elementary School, costs more to build in the heart of Church Hill than an elementary school that was built in a suburb. Remember, George Mason, the former George Mason, now Henry Marsh Elementary School, is built in one of the earlier parts of this city. You're not going to find too many places in this whole state as old as the area around Church Hill. Just won't find it. Just won't find it. Now, if I'm building a house, yes, cost is important, but so is quality. So is comfort. I don't trust people who, on one hand, say that our children are our most valuable resource, but on the other hand, cite cost as the reason not to move as quickly as possible to rebuild these schools. I have a hard time trusting people that's speaking at both sides of your neck. It's very counterintuitive. We have to value our kids. And we can do that. This is the both and right here. This is not an either or proposition. We can get our kids into a high quality learning environment as quickly as possible, and we can do it cost effectively. That's not an either or, that's a both and. And government works better when we do the both and not put ourselves in either or boxes. Bottom line. Here's the facts. We built 3 21st century learning environments in 3 years that are serving thousands of children today, in the East End and in South Richmond, Black and brown communities. That occurred because of people working together. When people thought we couldn't do it, we did it. So, we have the same opportunity before us today. I just hope that we have our priorities straight. Because the average Richmonder believes our priorities are obviously out of whack. So before I take questions, I want to conclude this conversation about schools with a question. Who are we building schools for? The answer is simple. We're building these schools for our children who have had to pivot for the last 2 years. None of us here will have experienced what our children have experienced over the course of these last 2 years. No one. Our children who went from learning in the classroom to virtual learning, and some who didn't learn at all because of the lack of access. And now we're saying they should wait till 2027. We're not going to get any medals because of that. No one's going to get a medal because of that. So, we have a proven track record of building faster and building better schools. Why would anyone question that? We must put the petty politics aside and put our children first. That means compromise and collaborate and work together in unity for one cause, the cause of ensuring that our children get the best and they get the most. The best and the most. Unfortunately, we've been a community that have given our children less and less. And I think you look at our track record, we're trying to give our children the best and the most. There's no doubt in my mind that the school board and the city council can do that. They go into this meeting tonight with that being their number one priority.